With the dollar's flight sending the rupee tumbling down to record lows with each passing day, the end to this political and economic turmoil does not seem to be in sight. Recently, leading businessmen gathered at the Federation of Pakistan Chambers of Commerce and Industry, or the FPCCI, to analyze the looming threat of a Sri Lanka like economic emergency as the dollar hit an all time high and closed at 224.92 rupees against the local currency in the interbank market on Wednesday. Today, it closed at almost 227 rupees. According to the businessman, the rupee's free fall has reached a point where it has become a threat to national security. We asked Mr. Shabbir Hassan Mansha, Vice President of the FPCCI, of how businesses are managing and the challenges they are facing during this economic chaos.
That actually all the businesses depends on there is a costing on every product, there is a sales for that product. Unless there is a cost to the product, nobody is sure that what the price is. Every day when we go to the bank, we see a new situation and the dollar price is different and the commodities prices are not stable. This doesn't allow us to have any costing from anywhere, unless all the raw material which are being used by the Pakistani exports and the domestic market are usually from the international market, and those international markets are causing a real difficulty in the market, that we don't have any cost, we don't have any power sector cost, we don't have any electricity cost. Unless we have any electricity or these costs, we are not able to give any prices. And this inflation add on to the fact that where the prices when are increased, the buying power of the consumer has always been reducing. And if the buying power of the consumer reduces after making such product, after having the production, there is no possibility that this businesses the goods will be sold at the right price, or we can have the profits. And the situation is unstable, there's no overseas investors coming in, the people are reluctant to work into it. This has got us into a very difficult situation to make any decisions.
With a shortage of US dollars in the open market and political chaos surrounding the free fall of the rupee, we asked former finance minister and senior economist Dr. Salman Shah for the real reason for the rupee's devaluation and economic turmoil.
I think there are several reasons for it. Number one, at this point in time, as you know, the Fed is pursuing a policy of increasing interest rates and fighting inflation in the U.S. economy, and that is creating a very strong dollar against all other currencies. And that is happening with Pakistan also to a certain extent. The other thing is that oil prices, which were coming down in the last week or so, started going up again, and that is creating a lot of issues with the Pakistan economy, because we just don't have enough reserves to meet these big payments. And naturally, when the reserves are not being used to support the rupee, any transaction, any lumpy transaction in the market causes the value of the rupee to go down substantially. And number three, of course, we have political uncertainty in the country. The whole polarized situation over here, we are not knowing what will happen in the future. Even the elections are not sealed yet. Whether it will happen in another month or so, will it happen next year? The uncertainty is there. And the IMF program, even though the staff level agreement has been done, it will be another month before actual money can flow in. And in the meantime, all kinds of speculations are happening. And so I think this is something which we will continue to face until we start getting some substantial flow in. Well, I think in this term, the entire situation means that the economy is going to shrink quite significantly, so that your imports are shrunk, your exchange rate is making it very difficult for industry in terms of getting their inputs, their raw materials, even energy. And most of our production is for home consumption. And so it's not a viable situation to import the energy and raw materials and then use them for domestic consumption, and we don't have enough exports. And the remittances and exports together are not sufficient for our imports. So I think this adjustment has to take place, which means that economic growth will come down significantly. The government has already increased uh, the petroleum prices, the electricity prices, and now the taxes have gone through the roof with the super tax. So it's not a good time for the production sector. Even when we look at the agriculture sector, their costs have also ballooned up. So I think that needs a very radical approach to everything, and we have to refocus the economy or towards exports and investment, and we have to deregulate the economy, because right now the government has just too much control over the economy, and since government management is so bad, we are just staggering right now in terms of our response to the external challenges. I think one we see that our discounted international obligations, the yields are very high on our bonds, and it indicates that investors think that we are not going to be able to service those bonds. But I think we have an IMF program, and if we have a solid kind of government in place, we may be able to save the situation. And so there has to be a consensus that we need to, number one, follow the IMF prescription, and number two, we need to have a debt policy where we can reschedule and restructure our debt, and we need a policy on deregulation of the economy, and so that we make it easier for transition from an import-oriented production system to an export-oriented production system. And also we should be able to focus on getting a smaller government, I mean reducing our expenditures, doing privatization. All of these things matter quite a lot. And if you see that this year's budget is probably the highest government expenditures in the history of Pakistan, and really this is a time when we should be cutting back on the government and trying to promote the private sector. So these basic reforms have to be put in place, and they have to be done very quickly. And if we are able to do it, and if we can show our commitment that we will do it, then things will start coming under control. Well, that was expected, since Moody's had already did this thing a few months ago, and basically in response to the vote of no confidence and the regime change in Pakistan, and all which has also followed suit. And basically they are just confirming that Pakistan needs to get its act together and move quickly on the reform agenda, and ensure that the IMF program stays intact. I think the more important thing is how we fix the politics of the country. And right now, I think the status quo is untenable. And therefore, the sooner we have an announcement for elections and we move into an interim government, which has to be empowered to ensure that the IMF program is implemented in letter and spirit. And then we head into elections with the political parties fighting the elections on the basis of their reform agendas. And we hopefully will get a strong government which can then actually do the reforms which are needed. And over the next 5 years, they'll be able to take and reorient the economy towards a more competitive, productive, and export-oriented economy from where we are today.
Will it lead to further economic chaos? Will the rupee continue its free fall as the US dollar gains? Is Pakistan headed down the same path as Sri Lanka's? Will the political fallout further hurt our economy? The next few months are crucial.